Hi, Joyce. I'm going to be with you in just a second. I just realized I forgot something, but I'll be right back. Okay, Joyce. Hi, Mary. All right. Can't hear you, Joyce. Just a sec. I'm going to unmute you.
Okay.
There you go.
That is if I'm going to be visible through the whole thing, my face or?
Yeah, there'll be a small window, and your PowerPoints, once you start sharing your screen, will kind of fill up the space.
Yes, I'll put it.
So, but there will be this kind of on the right hand side. Usually there's a box, unless you've clicked something. There'll be a little column of boxes, and you'll see a few heads. One of them will.
Okay. I see them across the top right now, but I have a Mac, so I don't know if that makes a difference.
There are different ways to kind of configure your screen, and it kind of depends on which buttons you've been pushing.
Yeah.
So what I'll do, Joyce, is just kind of get us started. People are joining. Like I said, we had like 34 responses.
Well, that's pretty good.
Great. And we've had anywhere from 5 to more, many. So that's a good response. Yeah. And so I'll get us started, and then I'll turn things over to you. And
okay.
You just pushed, you remember the share screen button at the bottom?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you just take over, and then just stop sharing at the end so that we can get back to this picture of all of us together. And I'll close us out.
Okay. Well, you want that for the question and answer time too, to stop the share?
Sure. And would you prefer that we hold questions till the end?
Yeah, I think that's going to work best.
I do too, especially with 34 people. And I don't think I'll have everyone introduce themselves. I think I'll pick like 4 people maybe who haven't attended an ECHO before.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Well, those of you who have joined us, we are going to get started in about 5 minutes. So thank you. And, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you, Christy, for typing into the chat. That was my next thing to mention. As you join us, please type your name into the chat and your location. We do have a large group joining us today, and that will help us with attendance and then making sure that we get those certificates out to you. Some of you have heard already, but maybe not everyone, that Lucia has moved on to a new position, and she used to help us do the administrative work for the ECHOs. And so I'm doing it myself, all by myself, until I hire someone. And so please don't worry if you don't get your certificate very quickly. It takes me a little longer to do it. I'm learning how, and I'm doing two things at once, two jobs at once. So I will get them out, and but I don't mind being reminded, just I don't want you to worry. So anyway, I'm gonna be quiet for a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, I have to share something. My cats are laying on the floor next to the door with their paws underneath the door, trying to get in and tell them, what are you doing? What are you doing in there? This is our storage room. And they don't understand why there's someone in here talking.
I have a pet too. I get that.
Isn't it fun?
Well, sometimes.
Yeah.
I have a dog, so she's pretty loud.
Yeah, yeah. I've met a lot of people's dogs
My
in the
daughter,
last few weeks.
yeah, my daughter's here and with my granddaughter, and the dogs are in the basement. So hopefully I can hear them barking now.
Oh, well, everyone, welcome. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. If you haven't heard me, please type your name and organization into the chat. That helps us make sure we get everyone accounted for our attendance, and that you will in turn get the evaluation survey, and that's the mechanism for getting the CE certificate. So it's really important that you complete that survey, and then I have a list of everyone who needs a certificate and can be responsive to your needs.
Thank you to every Sun Country employee who has worked tirelessly to take care of our guests and make sure our operations run safely and smoothly.
All right, we're right at noon, and I'm so glad to see all your faces, those that I can see. Thank you for joining us at the Wayside Women's Services Echo. We are so appreciative of this opportunity to get together, to make connections, especially in this time when we're all sheltering at home. But a lot of us are still working, and it can be a lonely activity. So it is good to see each other, and also we'll share some conversation. Today we are we're going to forgo our usual introductions of everybody on the screen. We had 34 folks respond and will possibly join us in the next few minutes. So I thought I would open it up to maybe several people who have not joined us on the Wayside Women's Services Echo. And if it's your first time, could you raise your hand so I can see where you are? If it's your first time on the Wayside Women's Services Echo, can I see your hands? Anybody? 1, 2, 3. Well, let's start with you guys, and we'll get to know you a little better. Let's start with Margaret. Margaret, I'm going to unmute you. Can you tell us who you are and where you work and what you're doing?
I'm Margaret Waddell, and I work with Wayside intake family program.
Wonderful.
And this is my first time.
I'm so glad to have you with us, and I hope you'll join us again at another time when the topic works for you. Let's go up to, I'm going to mute you again. Let's go up. I think Cynthia, was it Cynthia who said it was it's not your first time, is it? Maybe the box is all moved. We're going to go to Jody Ingleby. Jody, have you been with us before? Oops, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's for the women's, but I've been on an Echo before.
Sure, but that's fine. If you haven't been with the Women's Services Echo here through Wayside, we are so glad you're here. Where do you work?
I volunteer at MRC.
Wonderful, good. That's so needed. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Is there someone else who it's your first time? Maybe wave at me again and then I'll know. Darcy, let's go to Darcy. Darcy, do you have a microphone?
Darcy's having a little problem hearing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because her microphone isn't coming up. Does she have headphones that she's been using?
No, she
Okay.
eventually gets on.
Okay, a number of people are finding that the headphone thing, either on or off, is helpful. Let's see, can we find at least one more person who's new to the Wayside Women's Services Echo? Can you wave at me? Someone who hasn't been here? Let's go to Tess. Tess, I'm muting you. Could you introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Tess. I'm a recovery navigator here at New Way. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to know?
Just how are you doing with all of the new changes in our lives?
It's been an adjustment for sure. I didn't really realize how important social interaction was until now.
Yeah, I think we're finding that, and I'm so glad you could be here with us. All right, so what we're going to do, as we often do, is take a little time. I'm going to turn things over to Joyce Finch, who will be our speaker, and she's coming to us from home, but on behalf of City House. And we'll learn more about the services and also about deep listening. And so I want to turn things over to her. I think it will be easiest, given the size of our group, if you could either just type in your questions, and Sherry Fisher also works at Wayside. We'll watch the chat and we'll help those questions get through. Or at the end, if you want to raise your hand or unmute and just ask your question, that would be great too. But let's wait till the end so that we're not talking over the top of each other. It's too hard just with this many folks. So I am at this point going to turn things over to Joyce, and Joyce is not muted, so you can just take over.
Okay, I'm gonna open up my PowerPoint here and get it in. Let's see now. I gotta get it started, and then, oh, I didn't share my screen first though. I need to do that first, is that correct?
I think so, but go ahead and try it.
Okay, you probably can't see it just yet. Let me end that and start again. I'll go here, share my screen. This is my first time too, for anybody who's.
Well, welcome. We're so glad you're here with us today.
Okay. So is that shared now with you?
No, it isn't. Let me see what I can do to help.
It said you disabled it. It said host disabled screen sharing. So
Oh, well, let's.
When I pushed on it.
That's so strange. I am going to.
Should I try pressing it again?
Yeah, do please.
Host disabled attendee screen sharing. Okay, so attendees can't share their screens, but I should be able to. Is that right?
Well, I'm going to make you the host for right now.
Okay.
I can do that. I'll make you a co-host. There you go.
There we go.
And now try.
There. Okay, that should work. So press the share button, right?
There we go. It's coming up.
There we go. Okay, so let me do the, and I'm doing a PowerPoint too, which this has just been a great learning curve for me. Now I can't get, okay, there we go. Play from the start. So, thank you all for attending, for listening to what I have to say today about the work of City House. I am the volunteer manager for City House, and I've only been on staff for 6 months, but I have been affiliated with the organization since 2003. I started as a volunteer myself, a volunteer listener. I did that for 12 years, and then I've been involved with trainings and was on the board. So I really understand a lot about City House from a lot of different angles. And it's been my delight to be a part of this organization. I am a trained spiritual director. If anybody knows what that is, it's a 2-year to 5-year. Some courses are up to 5 years, including your internship years, where you do learn about deep listening, about spiritual listening, about companioning others in their spirituality, in their journeys with God, higher power, however they name that. So it's a pretty intense training. And let's see, what else would I say? I was the coordinator then of a training program like that for a while as well. So I have a lot of background in listening, and I started out as a speech therapist in my first career. So listening was always a part of that too, and helping people express themselves. So it's kind of a common thread through my life. My partner and our executive director, Rolf, was unable to be with us today. He is the one who's a little more seasoned with these kinds of presentations, so I'm just going to ask for your patience if I stumble through a little bit in talking about some of the pieces that he normally would. It was our plan to do this together. But Rolf has a ministry degree, and he's been involved with community engagement and lots of different efforts to end homelessness in our area, in the metro area, for more than 13 years. So he's also been very involved with the populations that we serve and with the listening work that we do. Unfortunately, we are a ministry of presence and being with others. So right now, most of our volunteers are at their homes, and we're trying to get going with some phone listening. So that's one thing we're having to do during this time. It's an upstart for us. We've always wanted to kind of add that on. So this is our opportunity to try to set up what does it look like to do some phone listening. So I'll continue on with my slides here. I think it's important to say why we are, the why of what we do. I'm having trouble seeing my slides in full here because of the pictures on the side. Is there any way we can remove those pictures for me?
Let's see. If you go up into the top right-hand corner of your screen,
Okay.
speaker view, or there are some other options for what you see.
I'm going back. I'm going back on my slides. I'm trying the top of my screen. Not seeing that.
Okay.
And I don't have my slides printed out, so unfortunately, if I can't read everything that's on there, it's going to be a little difficult.
If you go up to the very top of the screen under View Options.
I wonder if I can minimize. Oh, there we go. So I did minimize the. That didn't take you guys out, did it?
No, we're all here.
Okay, good. Okay, that helps me a lot to uncover my slides here. So thank you for your suggestions. So the why of our organization, there is an epidemic of loneliness and isolation in our country and world, and probably more so today with our COVID-19 situation we're in. But this has been true for a long time, and it seems to be increasing. You've probably read some articles on that yourself. So this is our why. We believe that deep listening and presence are fundamentally important for connection, relationship building, and for the process of healing. We really emphasize story. We believe that every human story is sacred, every encounter matters, and that we are called to show up and be present. So our background is that we were founded in about 2002, founded by a United Methodist pastor. He started with the idea of a retreat center in Minneapolis, an actual building where people would be able to stop in and have someone listen to them, pray with them, whatever they might need, just that presence with people. And then it evolved to the building wasn't coming, the place to be wasn't coming, and so he thought, well, we can go to places. So we got involved with several social service agencies, faith community settings where we can go and be present with people who are experiencing difficult times. We refer to ourselves as a faith-motivated organization. Our founder, as I said, was faith-based. And many of our volunteers do this work because they feel they have a calling to it. We are not affiliated with any particular denomination. We do have a Christian background. That's how it was founded by people who identified as Christian, but it has and continues to be a very open organization in terms of wherever people are at with their spiritual life. And we'll talk more about how we define spirituality. We have 3 part-time staff. Myself, I'm actually less than half-time. Our director even is not quite full-time, and we have a very part-time administrative assistant. That's it. Really, the heart of our organization is our 40+ volunteers. There are a few in process to come on board. Most of those are our listeners. We have about 35 active listeners, some that are on sabbatical, still involved with us, but there are other volunteers we have as well. We have 12 different partner organizations, and I will list those in another slide, and 20 sites. Some of our partners have multiple sites. So again, this is our audience, the people that we serve. We are present to those with lived experience of poverty, homelessness, mental health issues, substance use disorder, reentry from incarceration, and other difficult circumstances. And the other part of our organization is to do training. So we train or empower anyone who wants to grow in compassionate listening skills. As I said, we have no home office, no building. We're a virtual organization. So if I meet with volunteers, I'm either meeting at a coffee shop or going to the site at which they serve. So again, being a ministry of presence, it's hard at this time to get together. So we've been experimenting with that as well. This is our mission as it's written. City House inspires hope, trust, and healing through spiritual listening with people who feel unseen and unheard. That last phrase, the unseen and unheard, is a bit new to us. We used to say people who find themselves on the margins of society. Even that word, margins, can be marginalizing. So when this phrase came, it seemed to fit really well with the group that we serve. Really, it includes all of us. At some point, we feel unseen and unheard in some way in our lives. Our engagement numbers are listed there from 2019. We just finished our annual report. So our City House listeners have offered more than 1,700 volunteer hours and we have them count the number of people that they interface with in a meaningful way, over 2,600 sacred encounters with individuals. And in our training, we've trained more than 200 people in 2019 in the area of spiritual or deep listening. So that is an increase from past years. This year, I'm sure we'll be way down from that, as most people's stats will be changed for this year. We recently wrote a values statement. The words that are underlined would be our values: deep listening, connection, etc. So we decided to combine them all into one cohesive statement. We hold sacred and faithfully extend deep listening and connection in ways that foster dignity, divine presence, and renewal in communal experience. One of our volunteers gave us this phrase down below when asked, what is it that you do? It's sometimes hard to explain what we do. What is, we all listen. What is your listening in particular? And she said, I listen to who people are. So this, we listen to who you are, became one of our meaningful catchphrases. So what is deep listening as we might define it? We do use a lot of terms interchangeably: spiritual listening, inner listening, compassionate listening. Depending on our audience, if we're talking to a faith partner, we might use spiritual listening. When you see it on our website, we do say spiritual listening training. So this is kind of a definition I've come up with all the different descriptions that we have of ourselves. It is the art of offering one's compassionate presence to another with the aim of encouraging the deepest, most authentic story of who they are. And it involves allowing myself to be changed as the listener or the witness to that sacred story. So it has two parts, as I wrote in the description. We are both accompaniment, which would be the first part of this definition, and there is mutuality in what we do. The people who meet with others, especially if it's a person from a different culture, a life experience, which is mostly true of our volunteers. They're in a different economic situation. Some have faced some of the same life issues, but mostly they're meeting people in situations they haven't themselves been in. So I said I'd talk about spirituality. This definition is one that we include on a sheet if we're going to hand it out to organizations or to people who might want to engage with a listener. So it's kind of written in that way. It is focused on whatever gives meaning to life. It is the wisdom within a person. It's not a particular religion, church, or belief system when we refer to spirituality. It can be connected to through music, art, poetry, different forms of movement. Nature is a big one for all of us, and connecting with higher power or God, as the person names that. So it's very individualized to each person. And a spiritual listener strives to help that person see how they are connecting with God, inner strength, hope, wisdom, peace, however that is experienced by the person. It's very much a meet you where you are kind of connection. So we try to get them to express what is difficult to talk about. Our spiritual life is often difficult to find words for. And then I put the word resist in there because a lot of times there's resistance to spirituality. There could be a wounding from the past, or a misunderstanding, or rejection of I don't have a belief, like you're talking about. And that becomes a starting point for conversation as well. So we don't only listen to people who claim that they have a spiritual life that's active. So I wanted to give you a taste of some of the things that we do in our training. And this poem is one that we often use. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of experience in listening yourselves. So I invite you to just get comfortable in your chair, wherever you're sitting, on your couch maybe. Put yourself in a receiving posture. Maybe take a good deep breath and release it. And if you want to, you can close your eyes. I've left the author's name there so you can look up this poem easily online. But I want you to just take in the words. Deeply listening. When someone deeply listens to you, it is like holding out a dented cup you have had since childhood and watching it fill up with cold, fresh water. When it balances on the top of the rim, you are understood. When it overflows and touches your skin, you are loved. When someone deeply listens to you, the room where you stay starts a new life, and the place where you wrote your first poem begins to glow in your mind's eye. It's as if gold has been discovered. When someone deeply listens to you, your bare feet are on the earth, and the beloved land that seemed distant is now at home within you. And then for at our workshop experiences, our trainings, we would leave quite a significant pause there for silence, for someone to look through the words. We usually read it twice. I won't do that today. At a second listening, we take it in a little bit deeper, and people will share out then the phrase that stood out for them. A phrase that we often use in talking about deep listening is it's about holding space within which another person can speak out their story, whatever is on their mind, heart. So it's really important for a listener to hold that sacred space. This article that I refer to from the Chopra Center, and the writer again is there in the website, you can find it easily, really echoes the way we describe listening and being present with others. There are 7 different tips they go through, and it's a good article to download. But I'll share just these couple of quotes from it. Through the practice of holding space, you serve as a container for which healing and transformation can take place. It's a powerful gift of presence that you can give to others through the quality of your attention. Your attention, focused and all-inclusive of whatever is happening in the moment, opens the door for others to see the reflection of their own soul in you. The self, talking to the self. So that capital S there on self is becoming more common. You'll see in spiritual writing, the true self, the higher self. Again, we would use language that echoes wherever the person is. We try not to impose language on the person we're listening to, but rather echo back the language that they are using. And it's important to say what it's not. All of our listeners are asked to make sure that it's clear they are not there to do counseling or therapy. Some people have counseling in their background, so they need to take that hat off and just be that listener who reflects more than guides directly. It is not about problem solving or fixing. Another part of that would be advice giving. So we're not there. We might reflect some things that sound like they're connected to what the person said, but we are not to give them direct advice, tell them what to do, tell them what to believe. And then this next statement goes with that. There's no converting. We do not proselytize or try to bring someone into a certain belief system, nor do we correct them. We might ask, no, that's an interesting belief. What brought you to that? So, and it's not about being their best friend either. We certainly gain connection and a fondness for people, especially if we listen to them more than once. Definitely a relationship forms, but we're not to become a best friend. I love this phrase by Parker Palmer. It sort of summarizes things. No fixing, advising, saving, or setting someone straight. Again, this next part is written kind of for the person who would be listened to. So these phrases we've recently put on a handout that we would give to people who might be interested in phone listening. So since we can't be present there, we are having them having front desks hand out or counselors hand out to individuals who seem to have an interest in having a spiritual listener. And give them these points. These are the kinds of things you might bring up in a spiritual listening session or deep listening session. You can explore your life events or patterns and discover deeper meaning, purpose, healing, or gratitude in them. Exploring how God or higher power, that connection to something larger than yourself, is supporting and guiding your life story. And again, if someone doesn't feel that connection, it's a point to begin. I don't know what is guiding my life. I only maybe pay attention to my conscience or whatever. That's, again, an okay starting point. And there are spiritual practices that we can kind of teach. And it can be as simple as a way of calming ourselves with a breath, centering on the inner life, the inner self. So we have some that do Tai Chi practice as before they do their listening sessions, they've got that skill, so they can offer a Tai Chi class. But peace, calm, and compassion within yourself, exploring practices that do that, or asking them, what practices do you already have? As I said, I wanted to talk about our partners, and these are the current partners that we have. We've had other partners that have been a part of our ministry or our organization before, connected to us. One I wanted to mention are our prisons. We have had a presence at the Women's Shakopee prison, and Rolf has been recently out to Stillwater prison with a group of chaplain interns, and we're working on a connection there where we might supplement what the chaplains are doing with some listeners. So if you're familiar with some of these places, which I'm sure many of you are, you know that some of them are drop-in centers for our neighbors in need of resource assistance. Some are transitional shelters for those experiencing homelessness or domestic violence, and some are residential or outpatient treatment places. Yeah, and the last three, of course, many of them have a connection with faith-based. They are faith communities or churches. The Basilica, Westminster, and St. Mark's are all places that have graciously allowed us to use some of their space for our training. So if you did come to a training, there's a high likelihood it would be at one of those sites. Our volunteers are really the core of what we do. I will just say again, we have nearly 35 active listeners, and we continue to recruit new people, mainly through our trainings, but sometimes someone just hears about us and will reach out and contact us. We have everything from listeners for just a month or so, and now they're all on hiatus, up to a woman who's been listening with us for 12 years. Most are retired or semi-retired, and most have other ministry training or spiritual practice that draws them to serve with us. Spiritual directors or chaplains or pastoral care ministry. Most of our listeners have that in their background, although that's not a requirement. And they come from diverse faith backgrounds or denominations. At this time, our volunteer group is not otherwise diverse ethnically, but we are always working toward that. We would like to grow in that area. So we do carefully select, train, and equip our volunteers to do this work. We have an application process followed by an interview, discernment if we haven't done that already ahead of time before they come to a training. And we follow up with having them do shadowing, and then they also are under supervision. So they have to be in a supervision group of some kind, either our own or some of them, like I said, have a spiritual direction or a chaplaincy supervision group already in place. They offer one-to-one, so appointments are sometimes made at places, or they can just drop in and have people sign up you know, ahead of time or at the time that they come. I used to work at a residential treatment place, and I would do a small group first, which is the second thing listed there, leading a mindfulness group, meditation group. And then they kind of got a taste for my how I viewed spirituality and could see that I was pretty broad in that. And then I would pass a sign-up sheet around in the group, and then they might have a 20 to 30-minute session one-on-one afterward if they would like to. As I said, it can include mindfulness, meditative movement, reflection exercises, and discussion. A lot of times, like reading a poem like I just did with you, and then going around in the group and sharing what stood out. We'll get at people's beliefs, and it's very good to hear the variety in the room and have people keep their minds and hearts open to new ways of thinking about spirituality. So the next thing I want to do is share a video with you of Jordan. He, I don't know if he's still at Union Gospel Mission. So clearly, as you listen to him, you're going to see that he has a strong faith, a Christian faith. Although, as I said, many of our participants would have other ways of expressing faith. But this is his story of how he viewed being with a listener for more than a year. And at this point, I believe Jordan had been at Union Gospel for 3 years. I'll make sure this plays okay here.
My name's Jordan Dolney, and I'm a student here in the discipleship program at the Union Gospel Mission, who's a partner with the City House. And I met with Glenn on a regular basis. Years ago this June, I showed up here at the homeless shelter, and I came here with nothing. I had a duffel bag and 3/4. I'm on probation still, but I need to make a phone call every day for drug testing, so that's what 3/4 are for. My dad didn't want to give me any money because he was fearful that I'd spend it on drugs. I've struggled with drugs and alcohol for the majority of my life, but I was sober when I showed up here, and I wanted to keep that because it's the longest I had been sober. I was in treatment in jail before I came here, so when I showed up, I had about 6 months sobriety underneath my belt, but I had nothing. I had nowhere to go, no direction. When I showed up at the shelter, there was a program here that really interested me and really piqued my interest. And I took a look at it, ended up signing up for it once I figured out what the requirements were, and filled out the application, got myself into it, and I kind of started snowballing from there. When I met with Glenn, it was really interesting. At first I was a little apprehensive about it, like what is a listener going to do? But then when I started showing up to the appointments, that's what I'll call it, but the time slot that I had with Glenn, I realized the importance of listening in a relationship, and I realized the importance of listening in my relationship with God. That's kind of one thing that it really helped me learn, is that it's not about me just praying to Him, but also I have to kind of sometimes be patient enough to wait on Him to give me those answers, or to open up that door, to hear that voice that's needed, or that word of encouragement, or that direction to go. Listening is important in every relationship of life. Relationships have to be mutual in order to function properly. And I think that's one thing that I learned for myself, because I had a hard time listening to other people. I thought my voice was important, and so it helped me learn an understanding of empathy and compassion towards others, but primarily the benefit of listening in a relationship. Because if He's going to be there willing to listen through all the crap that I'm going through, then why wouldn't He have some trust in me, and therefore I can have trust in Him because He's willing to show up. How I've seen that manifest itself in the relationships that I have outside of the one with Glenn is that if somebody is coming to me with their situation, I'm not going to rush to the point of problem solving. I'm not going to rush to the point of solutions. What I'm going to do is completely hear them out, and until they get to the point of they're asking for advice or they're seeking it out, I'm not just going to willingly give them the advice, because they might not be ready for it. They might not even want it. So what's the benefit of, if anything, it can be negligent. So I think I think what the sessions with Glenn has really helped me understand is the actual importance of listening in any relationship. A lot of people wonder, what does it mean to deep listen? Well, it's because you haven't processed it yourself, or you haven't experienced it yourself. Deep listening really is, being 100% there with the person, 95.5 there with the person, rather than having your mind somewhere else or thinking about something else. Deep listening is about really being there with the person. I just passed all my finals and graduated from the diploma program through St. Paul College, and I signed up at the hall on Tuesday for getting my referrals for working for Local 455. So I think that's a significant way that God's worked in my life. But outside of that, there's been a lot of internal happenings. Like I said, when I showed up here, I had nothing. I was extremely hopeless. I was extremely helpless because I didn't have any means to take care of myself. I think really when the hope started becoming more solid and concrete, faith is the evidence of things hoped for and Yeah, evidence of things hoped for and the substance of things not seen. I really figured out what it was like to have hope and to have faith in Christ, and know that my life had a purpose to it still, that it wasn't, without worth or value. And I think that's something that God has really helped me establish throughout the last 2.5, 3 years.
So you could hear in Jordan's story, it wasn't just about being listened to. He learned to kind of listen within and then bring deep listening skills to other relationships, finding value in it in many ways. And one of those success stories, which is always nice to hear. So we said we would tell you more about our trainings. We offer, Rolf and I usually do these together. We sometimes bring in other volunteers to give some of their stories. We offer spiritual listening trainings, and they are, as this bottom part says, they can be 6-hour public trainings open to anyone. And you could just be interested to hear about City House or potentially volunteering. And then we can also create customized 2 to 4 hour trainings that fit the needs of anyone's organization. Urban pilgrimages are another thing that we do. Sometimes that's our second part of training a volunteer. And an urban pilgrimage is an experience, kind of a day in the life. Union Gospel Mission that you just heard Jordan talking about is one of the places we might go to. Youthlink, Higher Ground, other places in Minneapolis. And we take a small group out to consider some of those, what we call sacred sites in our city, to go to those partner agencies. We take a tour, we break bread, and that's our time of listening, sitting down with people who are at those locations, living there usually, and just kind of practice deep listening and having a conversation. And we open and close the day with times of quiet, usually at a church nearby setting, where we can reflect together, and sometimes covering issues like economic injustice, racial injustice, entering into being with others rather than just being that observer. And we look at the gifts in our community, and it's a chance to become more aware of the needs in the community if people haven't been exposed to that before. So that's an urban pilgrimage. Our retreats are open to usually the people in our community. Sometimes retreats are just exclusive to our volunteers. And then for our volunteers, we also offer a lot of continuing ed workshops. We try to have a couple a year. Substance use disorder is certainly a topic, trauma, domestic violence, etc. Things that we can learn about that will help us in our listening and understanding the people that we serve. Rolf has also given some sermon messages for faith congregations, if that's something that would be of interest. So trainings are for those interested in learning this practice, for increasing the capacity for relating to the unseen and unheard, and for developing your ability to listen in a compassionate, non-judgmental manner. That's kind of a repeat. I wanted to share this LISTEN. We use a document that is really kind of the heart of what we go over in our training. I'm just giving you kind of an overview of what it is. It says pre-listen at the top because there are things we can do before we even enter a listening session that we're going to have, and then the listening afterward within ourselves. What did we hear? What did we notice is important. So it's important to bookend listening with some reflection. The first thing to do that we train people to do is to have a time of letting go of what you just had on your mind. Maybe you just had a session before that was someone that was a little tense. There's something going on in your life that you need to just kind of set to the side. It's also about letting go of any agenda that you think you might have with this person that you're going to meet with, something you want to convince them of. Again, just getting that open-ended spaciousness in yourself, letting go of expectation that anything in particular would happen. I is for inviting the spirit, or inviting that inner sense of knowing you're not in there alone, that There is a presence that will be between and with the two of you, however you understand that, making that inward connection, acknowledging there's going to be a wisdom or higher power present in the conversation as well. So that's pre-listening. These middle things are things we want people to be aware of while they're listening. It's always good to be aware of your inner responses and be self-aware. And again, we go into much more detail. We have at least a couple paragraphs on each of these that we read out loud together in our training and have people then engage in discussion with. Missing a page here, just hang on. In self-awareness, I like to say that the most important listener in the room is the person across from you that you're listening to. Hearing their own words coming back to their own ears, and how they're expressing things. I know when I meet with my spiritual director, I've had lots of different therapies and things in the past, hearing my own reflections and then coming to that wisdom, just because someone was in the room listening to me and helping me articulate it. And the things I would hear myself say were the most important things. So tuning into the other, noticing beyond the words being said, of course, what is the body language, what kind of emotions might be emerging or showing up, and reflecting those back to the person as a way to deepen the sharing. And encouraging the sharing again. We talk a lot about the art of asking open-ended questions, such as what brings you hope or strength? Again, maybe not asking directly about God if that's not what they've mentioned previously. You can notice significant parts of their sharing, ask them to tell you more, and give reflective comments that bring out more of what they is kind of on their mind or heart that day. And then noticing the spirit, as I said, wisdom sort of comes out of the middle of what is shared between the two of you, and sometimes it's just felt in the room, like when a deep insight comes for the person. An important part of listening too that isn't maybe directly in any of the letters, but it's something we talk about a lot, is allowing for silent pauses in a conversation. This is an uncomfortable thing for us a lot of times, but letting silent moments be, giving the person that time to say the next thing before you jump in. And again, it's our human tendency to want to fill in those gaps, is really important. If you take the letters at the top, listen, you can notice that silent is also spelled with the exact same letters. So we like to point that out. And then debriefing, sometimes it's just important to take a moment, again, maybe do some deep breathing, release that conversation, and process within yourself what you noticed, if you had some strong feelings about the conversation. So that's about all I have to share. I wanted to share our contact information, so you'll have this when you get the printout. And I just open it up for your questions. So I think, what is it I need to do now? You're still muted, I think.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. You need to stop sharing. So,
okay, I will do that. There
we go. Well, everyone, we now know a little bit more about City House, and at this point, either raise your hand if we can see your image, or type something in and we'll call on you to ask your question, or Sherry and I will help communicate that. Does anyone have a question about City House or deep listening or anything that? Oh, we have an ask for the website address.
Oh, okay. Didn't put that on. It's
Can
just,
you? Oh,
yep.
go ahead.
www.city-house, not underlined, city-house.org.
Okay, I just put that in the chat.
Okay.
Anyone else have a question?
Like most small nonprofits, we don't have a really robust website. I'll just say that. It's just pretty basic information. We're always looking to expand it and improve upon it, but we're not what we consider a high-tech organization. So you'll find things there, but we're getting better at it all the time.
I had a couple of questions. How is there a cost for the training to come out to or to develop a new partner? How do you remain financially viable?
Oh, yes. Well, thank you for asking that. We try to make our trainings very affordable because, again, it's a way to let people know who we are. So that's $50 is all that we've been charging for a 6-hour training and a get to know us. And if people can't afford that, we also, or it's a partner that we want to find out about us, or somebody, even a donor that we want to find out about us, we sometimes don't charge that person. So the cost to come out and do a training at a site, I can't speak to very well. That would be a question to email to Rolf. But I think that's, I know that we've gotten paid for going out to, there was a church recently that wanted to invite people who were experiencing food insufficiency or were out on the streets to come and have a meal on a weekly basis. And there's many churches that do that now. And they wanted to learn how to be good listeners while they did that. And so we arranged that with the pastor. And yeah, there is a fee. I can't say it's pretty fluid with whatever the organization can afford. And yeah, but there is a charge for that.
All right, so then we can just go to the website and contact Rolf for more details.
Right.
You mentioned doing small groups at organizations, and I think I talked to Rolf at one point about some of your work at Avivo. How small is a small group? I'm thinking about residential treatment and our limit at 16. Many groups are at 16. Is that still small?
Yes. Actually, when I was doing listening work and leading groups, and this was at Transformation House, if you're familiar with that organization, sometimes I'd have 30 women in the room around a big table. So I don't know if they can have that size of group now. I know regulations continue to change, but yeah, the ones that are doing groups, and we have far more people doing individual one-on-one. We want to make sure they're skilled at group dynamic. Typically in a treatment setting, we've had to have a counselor in the room with us if it's during the regular programming day. So there is help in that way with managing such a large group. But yeah, I think any size, whatever fits the room, of course. Yeah, it's variable.
Okay. Anyone else have a question, maybe about how deep listening might be utilized in an organization where you work, or maybe an experience? Looks like Jeannie has a question. I'm going to unmute you, Jeannie. Go ahead.
Thanks, Rebecca. Joyce, so I live in Meeker, McLeod, Sibley counties and a certified recovery specialist. And so I'm urban, I'm rural, and this looks like it's kind of metro based. How would something like this get outside of the metro? And are you doing training right now with COVID?
We aren't doing training right now. We don't have our next one scheduled. We have never really done them online because part of the day are listening experiences where you pair up with someone and you actually try to use good listening skills and then come back to the group and share. So it's hard for us to imagine how we would do the training at this time. We have gone out if it's, if there's maybe more than one organization in an area that's interested in hearing about our training and utilizing it. You don't have to utilize City House volunteers. You can just deepen what your own volunteers might be doing in terms of listening. So we don't have the push to like have our model duplicated anywhere, but we are interested in expanding deep listening wherever people want to use it in whatever way. So we, you know, again, you'd arrange that through our executive director.
So even on a personal basis, not as an agency basis, you know, like for myself per se, interested, not necessarily going with my agency. Do you do that type of training, or it's got to be an agency?
I'm not sure I understand your question. So any person can come to our trainings just to get, let's say they're in some kind of work where they are listening one-on-one with people and they just like to be able to do that better. Or people from our agencies would come out and take our trainings. So
it sounds like you can, yeah, you can do it either as a group with your work, or you can enhance your own skills by attending one of those 6-hour trainings when they're available again.
Right. We do make them very interactive. There's usually a rich group of people around the table, so we like to hear what drew people to being to coming to something that's called deep listening. I wouldn't mind hearing some of your comments about what drew you to what this topic was today, and if there's anything in particular you resonated with. Comments are fine too. You don't just have to have a question.
Anyone else have a question or want to comment on what deep listening, why it was an interest to you today?
This is Ashley here from part of the mobile SUDS team at Minnesota Recovery Connection. Something that really attracted me to this was in peer support. A huge part of it is listening. And I sometimes find myself, how do I put it? Like thinking of what I'm going to say, you know, instead of listening. That's definitely a downfall of mine. So working on deep listening and active listening, I think could benefit anybody in peer support work.
Yes, thank you for that. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's very countercultural for any of us to not have that going in our head, what we're going to say next, you know, how there's a parallel story going on. I just want to share with you. And I know that's common in the recovery area to, you know, have that common ground of a story of your own, but to really kind of set that aside until it's maybe your time to do that. We have that tape going in our head at all times, but how are we showing that we're present and attentive anyway? We're never going to make that go away completely, but thank you for your comment. Appreciate that.
I think that as we are nearing our time to let you all get back to your day, there are so many applications for improving our ability to listen and be present with people. And so I hope that you all have learned a little something about City House and we can pursue learning more or checking out a training. If you, from what Joyce said, if they are working on doing listening sessions via telephone, at some point we may develop a training that would be available via Zoom or online, and maybe I'll talk to Rolf about how to help facilitate that, because I think a lot of interest in this topic, and we all want to, many of us want to be better listeners. So thank you so much, Joyce, for spending your time with us today. As we kind of wrap up our conversation, I want to remind everyone that if you didn't put your name in the chat so that we make sure we get your attendance, please do so before you leave. I'll be sending an evaluation survey to you, and at the very end of that survey is where you request wanting a CE certificate, and then I will send that out to you. We always have room to invite additional colleagues and people in our communities to join us on ECHO. And I'm also working on developing our schedule into the fall. So if you have topics or a presenter that you've always wanted to hear, or an organization you've wanted to know more about, you know, we're here to be your legs and bring that information to you and to the community. So please email me and let me know what your ideas are or what your needs are, and we will try to meet them. So invite them to join us, invite them, colleagues, to participate. The next session will be, let's see, May 7th. Yes, yes. And we're going to be hearing from Amy Krentzman, which is interesting because I've been seeing her on the news lately. She's been interviewed by several news organizations in response to COVID, and she did a study on journaling to support addiction recovery. And she did a report on that, and she actually did some of that research at Wayside Recovery Center. So we're excited to hear about what she found in that research and more about journaling. There's a strong journaling tradition in the recovery community. And then following that, we're going to have a 3-part series that's being presented by the Department of Corrections. And they really want to kind of open the doors so we all understand a little better about what kinds of health services people who are involved in the criminal justice system, what kinds of health services they have access to, what release planning works, how it works, and how we can maybe work better together as a community of support on the outside and the community of support on the inside. And then also, we want to hear from you about questions, cases where either things went really well or things didn't go well at all. And maybe learn from those experiences so we can improve the lives of people who are transitioning from criminal justice system into either treatment or living in recovery or just living. So I'm excited about that 3-part series, and it will run into August. So please watch for those. And at this point, we are 2 minutes out from 1 o'clock. Does anyone have any last minute comments or questions?
I definitely want to thank you, Rebecca, for hosting this today and for having me come. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all are well and stay well, and that you in some way deepen your listening both to yourself and to other people. So thanks again.
Perfect way to end. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful and safe day, and I hope to see you in a couple weeks, if not sooner. Take care.
Bye.